Hello, and welcome to the Fairfield Museum's virtual museum. My name is Walt Matis. I am the program and volunteer coordinator here at the museum. That means I arrange programs and set up volunteers and docents to work or to help out and volunteer during those particular programs. At this time, the museum is actually closed to the public, but we're trying through these virtual methods to reach out to you and continue to be a part of your experiences over the course of the day or month to enjoy some of the things and learn a little bit of some of the things we're doing. In 1779, when Crown forces land in July and actually come into Fairfield. They will be here for a little over just about 24 hours and will burn a significant portion of the town on the way out. But today what I'd really like to talk to you about is some of the women who are connected to that story. And most of what we know of the attack and burning in 1779 actually comes from women's experiences, and there's a few reasons for this. First and foremost is that the area for those reasons. So pretty much the elderly and children and women in particular here in the town in 1779 when the town itself is actually attacked. And what happens is these women who experience the events and things that are going on here in Fairfield at that time are actually give deposition. So after the smoke is cleared, if you will, the people come into town and they actually take written testimony of these women and learn about what happened. And those testimonies still exist and they're still on record. And it's a way for us to be able to look at the events that happened here at the time of the attack in 1779. And one of the longest depositions that we actually from a woman by the name of Eunice Burr, who lives in or at the site, I shouldn't say in because the structure that's there will be built later, but she lives at the site of where today the Burr Mansion stands on Old Post Road. Now, she is married to Thaddeus Burr. They get married in 1759, and so Thaddeus is a probate judge here in the town. He also serves as sheriff for a period. During the American Revolution in particular, he is actually part of what's called the Committee of Safety, and it's actually running the military. The attack actually happens. So in 1779, Eunice is roughly 47 years of age. And they have no children. Thaddeus and Eunice have no children. So she is home alone, and she gives us this account of the events from the troops marching into town. General Tryon actually comes to her home and writes a letter because as people begin to figure out that structures are being burned, they're trying to get their homes protected. But as soon as he leaves, that piece of paper, the soldiers who were coming around later as the town is being burned, basically tear that up. They just don't listen to it and end up burning the structure that she and Thaddeus lived in, which was built about 1700. It's destroyed. It's actually burned down at the same time as many other structures here in Fairfield. So she also, she mentions a gentleman by the name of Thomas Chapman, and it's interesting because she actually knew Thomas Chapman prior to the American Revolution, and he was part of a loyalist regiment that came into Fairfield in 1779, known as the King's American Regiment, and they know each other, so when he comes to her home, she's like, I know you, and what is this all about, and why would you want to do this? So we get a first-hand account of the recognition of, for lack of a better term, neighbors. He wasn't actually from Fairfield, but she knew him well enough to say, you know, why are you here? Why would you want to do this to this home that you've been to before? So it's a wonderful account of the events and things that take place here in Fairfield in 1779. Now, she will outlive Thaddeus by about 4 years. She'll pass away in 1805 at 63 years old, at which time she'll actually be buried in the old burying ground. The actual attack in 1779, she's 43 years of age, and she's married to Gold-Selig Silliman. Gold-Selig Silliman is a brigadier general at the time of the American Revolution in the militia, in the Connecticut militia. But Gold-Selig Silliman is actually her second husband. So her first husband is actually a gentleman by the name of John Noyes. And John Noyes had passed away in 1767. She and Mary and John had been married for about 8 years at that point, and they have 3 children that will survive to adulthood. And this is important in a sense when John passes away in 1767. And part of the reason this becomes important is that she already has these 3 children, and John Noyes leaves his widow, Mary, fairly well off. She's in a very good economic position. And so she has a concern, as many women did at that time, about remarrying. And the concern is that in the colonial period, women could control, in fact, she's the executrix of John Noyes' estate when he passes away. They could own property and have money, but as soon as they would remarry, their new husband would actually have control over that money. So inherently it became his, and she wants for that money to be there for her children, to take care of the children that she and John Noyes had already had, that they would be, in a good financial position to go to school, to college, and to have a good life, and that she too could benefit from this. And so for about 8 years, she doesn't remarry, and it's not for lack of suitors, it's not for lack of individuals who are coming forward and wishing to marry her, but she chooses not to marry any of them. And it's believed that some of the reason for that is that she's trying to make sure she's going to get the right husband, the man who will care for not only her, but her children, and care for them and their future. So eventually she meets Gold-Selig Silliman, who's from Fairfield. At that time, he's only a colonel in the Connecticut militia, but they form a relationship, and we're very fortunate in that there's a lot of the letters that she wrote to him and him to her have actually been saved. They exist many of them in the Silliman family papers, which is at Yale University. That we're able to see how they communicate with one another. Now, Mary is very well educated, and so she writes liberally, and as does Gold, so that we do learn a lot. And there are letters that go back and forth where he begins to realize that part of the issue that she has with possibly marrying him is that she does have this concern for her own children, and he tries to reassure her that he will do his best to take care of them. In fact, she even gives a little bit of a rebuttal at one point where she's like, well, you say that now, but how do I know once I'm married and in theory have no more control that I can, trust you? And so she's intelligent enough to recognize that the possibilities here. But they do indeed get married in May of 1775. So that they get married, and they do move here to Fairfield. The Silliman home that they actually lived in still stands. It's on Jennings Road, right across the street from Overlook. Hunyadi comes down right alongside basically the structure today. But that structure was built about 1756, and it plays a very significant role in their lives in May of 1779. And the reason for that is in May of 1779, on the evening of April 30th, May 1st, a group of loyalists come over from Long Island, and they make their way up to that house, and they wake the family up, and they kidnap Goldsellick Silliman and his son from his first marriage, William. By this point, there is actually a son between Mary and Goldsellick Silliman Jr., and he was born, so in 1779, he's about 2 years old, and she's actually pregnant at the time with their second child. And so, in fact, she has a lot of concern about that child and about the excitement of this evening and what if it may affect the child. So William and Goldsellick are kidnapped, taken back to Long Island, and they're held as prisoners for a year. And it's decided the way prisoners usually worked in the period of the American Revolution was often if you were important enough, if you will, in this case, Goldsellick Silliman, once again, is a general in the militia, you would be exchanged. They would use them for an exchange of other prisoners that the Patriots might have. And it's decided that the Patriots do not actually have a prisoner in their possession that is worth trading or of equal level to Goldsellick Silliman. So Mary actually on her own decides that something needs to be done. She would dearly love to have her husband. And so she recruits a gentleman from Newfield, Newfield today is Bridgeport, but Newfield was actually part of Stratford at the time. She recruits a gentleman by the name of David Hawley, and he gets a group together, and they actually go over and they kidnap a gentleman by the name of Thomas Jones, who's a judge in Long Island, and bring him back to Fairfield. And so they're holding him in Fairfield while Goldsellick Silliman is being held in Long Island. And there's a interesting story about Thomas Jones being brought to Mary Silliman's home for dinner, and I've always kind of wondered how awkward that may have been of a dinner, to be sitting there knowing that you were a prisoner because her husband was a prisoner in Long Island. But the good news is that they are eventually exchanged. It's about a year later, so about April of 1780, there is an exchange, and so Goldsellick Silliman does return. An interesting final note on that story is that Thomas Jones' wife sends a thank you gift for his good treatment while he's here in Fairfield, and ironically that gift is a box of tea. So there's a little bit of a question of, did she feel that was a kind gift, or was there a little bit of a kind of a nudge there by sending tea? So in 1779, during the attack in July in 1779, Goldsellick Silliman is actually still a prisoner. He's still being held in Long Island. And so at that time, Mary is about 43 years of age. Her home, as we've said, is farther from the center of town than Eunice Burr. So her experience at the time of the attack in 1779 is very different in the sense that Eunice Burr is, if you will, at ground zero. Her home is right here near the center of the town. The British bring roughly 2,500 troops, which are all over this area, and so she is very much at the heart of what's going on. Mary Silliman is removed roughly 2 miles, 3 miles from where the center of town is, and actually is on a higher ridge, in an area basically today, the Holland Hill area, and she's able to overlook the town. So they can actually hear gunfire, they can hear the cannons, and things like that, but they are removed. They are separated from where the actual events are taking place. So Mary will actually gather up her family and they will leave Fairfield. They will actually go to an area that at the time is known as North Stratford. Today it's Trumbull, but they actually retreat there. Now, remember what I said about the time of the kidnapping, that she was 6 months pregnant. So by the time of the attack, she is almost 8 months pregnant, give or take. And so the amazing thing is she's dealing with all these events that are taking place at the time of the attack, and she's 8 months pregnant, carrying this child. In fact, that child, Benjamin Silliman, will actually be born in Trumbull. He will actually be born at a tavern in Trumbull because she is still there and not at her home. She does return to her home. Her home is not burned. And she does return at different points, but it's actually a lot of the people who had evacuated, some of the people, I shouldn't say a lot of the people, some of the people who had evacuated from the center of town, some of them had actually moved up to her property. They were actually fleeing the center of town, if you will. And so they were there on her property, and she actually describes that about finding them there. So she has left someone there to watch the property, so it's not without anybody she knows. But she, like I said, is in Trumbull in August of 1779 when she delivers Benjamin. Goldsellick, as I said, Goldsellick Silliman will return, and they will continue to live here in Fairfield. Goldsellick Silliman will actually pass away in 1790. And she will outlive him, and actually she will eventually have a third husband. She will marry a gentleman by the name of John Dickinson in 1804, and she will pass away in 1818 and is buried in North Stonington, whereas Goldsellick Silliman, her husband during the period of the American Revolution, is actually buried here in Fairfield. Her story, and as I said, she was very literate, and there are all the letters, many of the letters are collected and information about her. And this led to, in 1984, a book called The Way of Duty, and it was by Joy and Richard Buell. And it basically is a biography of her life using these primary sources, which once again is how we learn about what things were like here in Fairfield at that time. In her case, it's really wonderful because it kind of encompasses more than just specifically the burning. There's this greater story of life for a woman in that time period. And that book would lead to the creation of a movie in 1994 called Mary Silliman's War. Mary Silliman's War really kind of only deals with the period of basically the kidnapping in May of 1779 through basically the burning and the return of Goldsellick Silliman. So that's basically the window that it covers. But it's a great film to watch and get some idea of what things were like here in Fairfield at that time, especially for her and her family. So so I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. Once again, my name is Walt Matis, and the museum is very happy to be providing you with these virtual experiences. We could always use support, membership, or donations. You can check out our website at fairfieldhistory.org or fairfieldhs.org to learn more about how you can help us with those things. So I hope you've enjoyed this virtual History Bites, and if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to send them, and we can work on getting you some answers or helping out with anything you might want to know. So thank you so very much. Take care. Goodbye.